So hello, everyone, and welcome to our charter directors meeting today. I don't know about you, but I was all thrown off. It's on a Tuesday, like things are different. So thank you to those of you who are here. And if you're watching this later, happy after Tuesday, I guess. So thank you so much for being here. We will go ahead and start out with some announcements and updates from our interim director, Cindy. So Cindy, take it away.
Thank you, Marie. Still not used to that title. Really, what Brian Bowles and I, Chair Bowles and I, are just kind of hacks. And in reality, our staff has been continuing to do amazing work and run the State Charter School Board in a way that we're very pleased about. And so thank you, Marie. I'm more like somebody to come in and just maybe give announcements about some of the really cool things that are going on in on our board and with our staff. The first thing that I wanted to mention is that the State Charter School Board has always been allocated some funds by the legislature for startups for schools. And while much of that money, and this is for starting schools from any authorizer, not just the State Charter School Board. The funds are sort of passed through our group, if you will, on their way to new charter schools. And these include big expansions and satellites, as well as new schools. And so that's been exciting. But because the legislature has been generous and we have extra funds in that particular fund, which we don't want to actually give back. You don't want to give money back that you've been allocated. You want to use it for purposes for which it's been allocated. And so our staff, under our direction, took a proposal to the Law and Licensing Committee of the Utah State Board of Education and asked if we couldn't use these startup funds, if code couldn't be changed to allow these funds to have expanded uses. And these would include for small expansions, and in addition to those uses, even startup funds for programs within your schools that are new and innovative. So we are in the process of sort of persuading our friends on the board of the USBE to approve this fully. It's come again with a favorable recommendation out of the Law and Licensing Committee. We're hoping that the full board will approve it, and we are excited to, if they should do that, to create an application that would allow all of our charters an opportunity to use even just a baby amount of startup funds for some of their pilot programs that were not already funded by provisions in the regulatory sandbox in education that is supposed to also fund similar programs. So anyway, that was really exciting to us. We'd like to see money get into your hands as charter directors, into your programs at your schools to fund new things, new and innovative things. We also were able to get this Board of Education last week to approve a huge simplification of our large expansion and satellite application process that passed last week in the actual board meeting. And so we're hoping that those of you who are contemplating large expansions or satellites for your schools will know that that process has been made very friendly, user-friendly, is how I'd like to put it. In addition, we were able to pass as a board our new strategic plan last month. I mentioned it in last director's meeting that I was very hopeful that it would pass. It did pass unanimously, and it essentially does a couple of things I just wanted to highlight. And one is that it really emphasizes the partnership that we have with our schools, the bilateral partnership. It reconceives the State Charter School Board as something very much different from kind of a heavy-handed, bring the mallet down, kind of a partner with schools, and instead looks at that bilateral agreement that we have with you, your boards, and looks at ways that we can partner. It brings that paradigm into our relationship in a big way. It also prioritizes building relationships with our schools, both staff and board, looking at ways legislatively with board rule, partnering with the USBE to look at ways to make the charter environment in the state friendlier in every way that we can, which could be anything from waivers in statute and board rule to a better funding climate, a more equitable funding climate, and in many ways looks for creative ways to improve and support schools that are struggling. It also this is really exciting for me. I've always been a person who thought that education, that the metrics of success were much broader than what sort of a state bureaucracy how a state bureaucracy typically defines those. And so what we're looking and excited about going forward are ways to include in an Exhibit A type thing. It may be called something altogether different, very unique metrics and accountability measurements for your charters based on what you're trying to do that's unique for students. And that's a sincere goal that it really sets us apart from the Utah State Board of Education, who by their responsibilities have to have certain minimum standards that all public schools have to abide by. But as the state charter school board who authorizes you and who has a partnership with you and your schools, we can take the role of looking at innovative accountability measures and innovative ways at looking at education success. So to me, that's really exciting. That's, as a pro-charter person, I love that we bring something very different to public education. I want to make sure that the way that we require accountability recognizes that. And then the last thing I want to say is at our board meeting this Thursday, we will be announcing a new executive director. So you're going to need to tune in. I've not been authorized to do that today, and it will still require a sort of formalizing, but we are very excited about that. Our staff is very excited about that, and we are looking forward to kind of a new era going forward on our board under new leadership and even new leadership structure. So those are the exciting things I get to announce today. Thank you, Marie, for the time. I appreciate it. Thank you, directors, for all the wonderful things you're doing in your schools.
Thank you, Vice Chair Phillips. We appreciate it. Wonderful. Okay, well, we will keep moving right along. We have Debbie Davis and Leah Voorhees who are going to do some information about compliance. And so we will turn the time over to them. Hi, Debbie.
Hello, and I'm really hoping Leah shows up because she's the expert on the topic that we're going to discuss with you. But I don't think I see her on yet, but she'll be coming. I know she had a couple other meetings she was juggling. So I will tell you a couple of things about the public education hotline. And then Leah can tell you a little bit about a specific challenge or concern that is coming up related to that. So again, my name is Debbie Davis. I'm the Chief Audit Executive for the State Board of Education. And my department, the Internal Audit Department, maintains the public education hotline. So that hotline will essentially listen to anyone that has any concern about public education. And then our goal with that is to try and get that individual with their concern to the right person or the right entity to address it, to review it, to consider resolution. And a lot of times it's not the State Board of Education that is the right one to resolve things. A lot of times it's an LEA. So many times when we get a concern, we will refer it to an LEA, we'll refer it to another section of the State Board of Education, or sometimes even a different state agency if that's appropriate. So that's kind of our basic method of how we handle concerns that come in on the hotline. Some of you maybe have received concerns that we send. When we refer them, we take a top-down approach. So we usually send it to the board chair, possibly a board vice chair, and then we always try and send it to either the superintendent or the charter director, multiple people to ensure that the concern is received, and then it would be at your discretion how you handle that concern when it comes in. And there's no responsibility to report back to us. Of course, you're welcome to, and we will maintain that information. But that's just a little bit of information about the hotline. Today, the specific concern that we wanted to address with you is regarding special education. And this is where Leah is the expert. Assistant Superintendent Voorhees is the expert in this area. But one thing that we noticed is, so internal audit with the hotline, we refer a lot of concerns to the student support section, which is the section of Assistant Superintendent Voorhees, Leah, and special education is part of that. A part of the student support section. Well, Leah came to me and she said, Debbie, we've received a lot of concerns about special education. And I did look up, we maintain a database of concerns, and I pulled it up today to look and see how many concerns we had. So last year, we logged 34 concerns about public education. 34 concerns. This year, 2024, and I'm talking on a fiscal year basis. So we've been in fiscal year 2024 for approximately 3 months, right? Just a little bit more than that. We've already received 28 concerns specific to special education. So Leah came to me and said, okay, we've received a lot of concerns. And one of the concerns they're noting is that it appears some charter schools may, and these are allegations, so I don't have details on them, but may be counseling students and their parents out of the charter school for whatever reason. But, and as Leah will tell you as soon as she joins us, that this is not legal. It's not, and there she is. I'm so glad she's here. It's not legal to do that. So Leah, just so you're aware, I've been giving kind of this, what the hotline is, the concerns that we've received on special education. We received 34 last year, 28 already in just the first 3 months of this year. One other area of data that I've pulled on this is with the Office of Civil Rights. And the last 2 years, the concerns that the Office of Civil Rights at the federal level has been receiving, and disability could be part of that. It's one of the protected classes, and with FAPE, the concerns they're receiving have increased exponentially as well. Usually they'll get maybe 2 or 3 a year, but in 2022, 2023, they've received 18 concerns, 20 concerns that are now actively being investigated. So this is an area of concern, but as Leah and I talked, and Maria was so great, Marie was great to let us come and say, hey, let's just train on this. Let's talk about it. Let's understand what the challenges are and figure out the best way to move forward. So with that, I think I'll just let Leah take it away as the expert.
Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Marie. And thank you for starting us off, Debbie. I'm meeting hopping as everyone is this morning. So it's like 12:45. I will be there at 12:45. So I just wanted to share some data with you related to those concerns that Debbie brought up coming to the hotline. And then I think all of you know that besides the hotline, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act has 4 dispute resolution options that are outlined, 3 of which in the actual act and 1 in guidance. And we recently had an IDEA state complaint, a formal state complaint with findings of noncompliance against an LEA that included this issue. State complaint findings are binding on LEAs within the state in which they are found, as are due process hearing requests. So it's important that you know that there was actually a decision in the last couple weeks in Utah, in addition to all of the hotline complaints. So I just wanted to share that with you so that you had actual, you saw the language that Debbie and I have seen concerns about, and you heard the language of the complaint investigator that sent a finding of noncompliance. So, so first of all, like Debbie was saying, okay, here is Office of Civil Rights guidance. Here 00105, January of 2017 is the most recent version of the OCR guidance related to counseling out in charter schools. And here's the definition, okay, the OCR provided. Try to convince a student or parents that the student should not attend or continue to attend the school because the student has a disability. That's the OCR's definition of counseling out. The OCR has been providing guidance about counseling out in charter schools since 2002. And this is just the latest iteration of the guidance. So I wanted you to have the link to that specific guidance. And then here is the language from the complaint investigator in the recent special education complaint with findings of non-compliance. Obviously you can read it, but I'm going to read it to you because I think it's really significant. Okay, so this is the complaint investigator's language. Meeting notes of the manifestation determination review, which is the review the IEP team does after a student with a disability has been suspended for more than 10 days in a single school year. Okay, indicate that the team decided to change the student's placement to home instruction for the remainder of the year. And here's the key finding of non-compliance. In exchange for parent agreeing to transfer student to another school the following year. The manifestation determination review team agreed that they would meet to confirm this decision with an amendment to his IEP. That was not a compliant discussion and or determination made by the IEP team. The IEP team had no right to have that conversation. That was actually a discrimination of the student's disability. I have not heard that as a result of this decision that the parent has filed a complaint with the OCR, but they would have every right to do so. And the OCR, a hearing offer or a complaint investigation already determined that there was a finding under IDEA, so the OCR would as well. So I wanted you to have that language and know that it's not just hearsay. That the complaints that we have seen come into the hotline, the public education hotline, some of them may or may not be founded, but at least this one was after formal investigation. So let me share some of the language of some of the other hotline complaints that we have received. Okay, this one was from May, end of last school year. Parent allegedly told the school, the state, to call the state as the state, and this is the parent language. State would recommend a district school. We would never do that, because that would be discrimination based on disability from our office. So that is an interesting conversation that the LEA told the parent to call the state, and we would tell them that the student should go to a district school, because that is not true. So then in August of 2023, another of the hotline complaints that Debbie is referencing, the language in that complaint. Once mom got in contact with the school, they told her she had to find a different school to take the student to, with the reason being that the special needs director had resigned. So the school was not currently in a position, allegedly, to provide the student with services. So the LEA, the charter school, allegedly told the mother to take the student to a different school. Okay, services and supports, the availability of them and or the cost of them, as you know, can never be a topic of conversation when it comes to eligibility and the IEP process for a student with a disability. That's something that the LEA has to take care of in the background. And our office is always happy to problem solve, to brainstorm, to talk about possible resources, to help LEAs to be able to think through how to provide those services and supports. And in cases where you need to brainstorm how to pay for them, we also provide coaching and mentoring and will help support conversations about costs. Those conversations should never be happening with parents. Okay, just recently, a couple weeks ago, when they got there, the teacher started word vomiting about blank, the student, that's the student's name is removed, telling them that they could no longer handle him or her and she would be better off in a public school. Again, a violation of allegedly the student's rights as a student with a disability. Okay. So, and I can't say whether any of these that came to the hotline happened or not, but I can say that the first one did because it was investigated. Okay. Another one just a week ago, parent was allegedly encouraged to look at schools in blank district that is more self-contained. Also, that is resources. The availability of resources in a charter school is not a reason for a student with a disability to not be enrolled or to stay enrolled. Yes, it is difficult for charter schools to provide all of the placements on the continuum. However, the charter school is responsible to provide all the placements if needed. Most of them are not needed, but the charter school is required to have a plan for how the charter school would provide all the placements on the continuum should an IEP team determine that a placement besides a special school or besides regular class is needed. And that's something, again, that we're happy to talk through and brainstorm and problem solve. Some charter schools have done really good research with the local private schools in their area, have contracted with therapeutic schools, contracted with special schools. Some charter schools have contracted in rare cases with districts just because capacity, districts don't have capacity, but some charter schools have contracted with private and special schools in their area to provide more intensive placements. And we're happy to help think through those kind of conversations. So then I also provide this information. This was a recent OCR decision with findings of noncompliance related to this exact issue. The LEA advised the parent to enroll the child elsewhere. And OCR, as you would guess, said that was discrimination. And that charter school is currently working on correcting noncompliance with the Office of Special Education. So here's some possible consequences that Debbie and I wanted you to be aware of as far as counseling out is concerned. So one is having an OCR investigation and the requirement to implement a corrective action plan. Generally speaking, that means updating policies, procedures, and practices. Sometimes that includes hiring new staff to be able to update, to be able to implement the updated policies, procedures, and practices. It often means professional learning and technical assistance for staff, required professional learning and technical assistance. In the case of an IDEA due process hearing decision, compensatory education is almost always a requirement. So you provide services and supports outside of the school day, above the school day, to the student to be able to bring the student up to the point the student would have been if they had not been discriminated against. Private school tuition is a frequent corrective action in a due process hearing. A due process hearing officer will require that the LEA pay to have the student enrolled in a private school, so that because the due process hearing officer determines that the LEA was not able to provide a free appropriate public education. Okay. That is super expensive, as you can guess. Again, updating policies, procedures, and practices, and providing staff with professional learning and technical assistance. And then state complaint investigation and corrective action is all of the above minus the private school tuition. State complaint investigators don't have the authority to require private school tuition reimbursement. So there are some of the possible consequences. And then another important thing for charter schools to remember, and we just talked about this week before last in the LEA Special Education Directors meeting, the Office of Special Education Programs recently reiterated in guidance that was put out on July 24th of 2023, provision in the law that they have been implementing with states for many years. The guidance that OSEP passed out in July is now requiring states to implement these provisions with LEAs. And every year we give every LEA a determination. Okay, that's the word in the law. That's why it's in capital letters. Okay, a program determination of compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We look at all of the compliance data and some of the outcomes data that LEAs must attend to according to the IDEA, and make a determination on a 4-point scale of whether or not the LEA meets the requirements with implementing the IDEA. If an LEA is not meeting requirements, which is the first point, okay, if the LEA is determined to need assistance, need intervention, or need substantial intervention, there are sanctions in the IDEA that OSEP is now requiring that we implement. And I listed those sanctions for you. We have been providing support for many years for LEAs whose determination is not meets requirements. And OSEP is now requiring sanctions, and those can include fiscal sanctions. All of your special ed directors, let me see if I can get it in. There you go. All of your special ed directors have this new guidance, and we are putting together a work group, which several charter school special education directors will be participating in to determine how the USBE is going to implement the guidance, because there are several things, including this, that we are going to need to add to our policies, procedures, and practices. And so we will be making those recommendations as a stakeholder group of LEAs and USBE and parent representatives in the next couple months for implementation in the new year. So I just wanted you to be aware of those possible consequences. I have provided other guidance for you about how to support students with disabilities in charter schools specifically. This is very specific charter school guidance. And as I've said, we are always happy to brainstorm and try to find resources and supports and problem solve with LEAs. So that is, that's basically what we wanted to share with you today. And of course, we're always open to questions. Thank you, Marie, for the time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's see. Did we get the question about the 504 students?
Oh, okay. Nope. Sorry. When I was presenting, I couldn't see the chat. So yes, OCR does apply to students on 504 plans as well. The complaint investigation and the due process hearing does not. Those are functions of students that are being evaluated for an IEP or that are on an IEP, but discrimination based on disability does apply to students on a 504 plan. Did that make sense? The difference between IDEA and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. The formal state complaint and due process hearing is IDEA. Discrimination based on disability is both.
And yes, it looks like that clarified. There was one other question there. They were asking if large districts are also hearing the same information. And they said that they lost count of the number of students that they get because the district told them to come to us so we could help their students.
Yes, yeah, that is also an issue, and also discrimination based on disability. So yes, thank you for asking that question.
Wonderful. Well, that looks like, oh, just got an echo. We get that a lot. So, all right. Well, Leah and Debbie, thank you so much for presenting today. And we appreciate you spending some time with our charter directors. So thank
Thank
you.
you for having us.
You are very welcome. All right. Well, before we get to our, in case you missed it, we have Holly here from the School Land Trust team, and she's going to share some announcements and updates and make sure that things are on your radar. So Holly, we will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marie. So one thing that I wanted to talk about today are some upcoming due dates. We have a really big one on October 20th. This is the first requirement for this school year in the School Land Trust program. So some of those things that are due for all schools, the Charter Trust Land Council type, that is going to be where you fill out your council membership form. And then in addition to telling us yes or no, the Charter Trust Land Council is a charter board, we need the council memberships updated, and then the principal's assurance to be completed as well. And I have hyperlinked many resources in this. So when I'm done, I will send this presentation to Marie and then she can forward it along. Up to October 20th. So if you have not done so already in your schools, make sure that you are reviewing the current year's School Land Trust plan. Review the implementation of the prior school year's plan. So that would be last year's school plan and how it went. And then also make sure that you are reviewing the Teacher and Student Success Act plan. So this is where our requirements differ a little bit. So if you are a school that has a trust land council separate from the governing board, you will have some website requirements that need to be updated on your school's website, and they are the council member names and a way to contact them, your proposed trust land council meeting schedule for the year. If you have not done elections already, there should be an invitation for parents to serve on the council. Make sure that the rules of order and procedure are updated and posted. The Teacher and Student Success Act plan should also be posted on your school's website. You need to have a school-specific link copied from the School Land Trust reporting web page, and that will help take care of 4 different requirements. The links to past plans, links to the current plan, reports for previous years, and then once you fill out the final report in January, it will update, and then the current distribution amount. When you are posting council meeting minutes, you can use a Google Doc. That way you can have just 1 or 2 people with the editing permissions, and then others can go in and view those throughout the year, so you won't need to keep updating the link. And then you can also use that Google Doc for council meeting notices, agenda, and draft minutes, which make sure you are providing those 1 week in advance of the council meeting. So as you are working on your school land trust plans, there may be a time that you need to make an amendment. So a few things: not all plans will need an amendment, but an amendment always will need to be submitted for a new goal, or if you are creating a new spending category. The amendments must be approved by all levels before the school may use the funds that are consistent with the amendment. So Those approvals that I'm talking about, those are the approvals that the plans go through. So first it needs to be prepared by the Trust Land Council. The governing board needs to do their approval. The LEA reviewer will need to do their approval, and then the School Children's Trust does the final approval. And once we have done that finalization, that's when you would be able to use the funds in the way that they were approved. So sometimes of when a plan needs an amendment would be a change in a current goal, the creation of a new goal, if there are significant changes in spending in a category, or if you're moving spending from one category to another within an existing goal. So a sub-example of this would be if you have salaries and benefits as an expenditure, but then it is changed to books and technology for whatever reason, or if you are going to be moving spending between any of the goals. So this is that approval process that I was telling you about just a minute ago. Within your councils, it is subject to a majority vote. And then on the School Land Trust reporting page, you will need to make a note of the date the amendment was approved, the number of votes for, against, and then any members that were absent. And the next thing I want to let you know about is our drop-in hours for question and answers. They are going on this week and next week. So if you have a question about the council membership or the principal assurance, you can come and talk to one of us. So I have 2 blocks tomorrow and then 3 blocks next week. And I tried really hard to make sure that I could reach most hours of the day, knowing how busy your schedules are. And then again, my list of resources that I will forward over to Marie, and then she can send out to you. And if you have any questions for us, we have our group email, and then you can also contact each of us individually. Okay, are there any questions for me? Okay, so this one, can you share the link of the School Land Trust reporting site? So let me share my screen and walk through this because it will change slightly depending on the school you are in. So if you go to our reporting website, you don't need to log in for this portion. The public reports is over here on the right side of the screen. And then once you open it, these are all of the charter and districts in the state. You can filter it just to charters, and then they're in alphabetical order. And then this is the part where you would copy the URL and put it on your school's website. And then that way, as contacts are updated, and then you just click into this report, and then this is for the current school year, but then you can also go back quite a few years on that one. Let me see if I just answered that question entirely. So this one, it's not required that you use this website. We just figured it would be easier because it automatically updates, and then that way you don't have to go in and update it every single year. So as long as all of this information is already on that school website, you don't have to necessarily switch over. So for the board council, they are required to do the assurances, the committee members, and post the TSSA plan. I'm not sure that I'm understanding that question. So can I maybe have some clarification on that one, please? Okay, so the Zoom link for the office hours, let's see. Okay, so I've got 2 different questions here. So the requirements for the Trust Land Council Those requirements are more of meeting and creating and preparing the plan. These requirements here are for the administration to be updating for the trust land councils. If the governing board is serving as the trust land council, theirs is slightly different where they only have the first 2 slides as their requirements. So I hope I'm answering that question and clarifying it. Okay, perfect. And then the Zoom link for the office hours, I will quickly put that in the chat. And then once you get a copy of this presentation, you will also have that. So let me just copy and paste it in there. Okay, I think I answered all of the questions. If there are any others, please let me know before I log off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Holly. We appreciate all the reminders and the great information you were able to share. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Marie.
All right. Well, next up, we have Lisa and Amber from the State Charter School Board team, and they're going to be sharing about GBOT 2.0. So if you've been in charters a while, you know, we've talked about this. You may even remember GBOT 1.0, I guess the original one. So they're going to talk about some updates and show you some really cool things. So Lisa and Amber, I will turn it over to you.
So Amber, I think you were going to start.
Yes, I'm going to start. I'm just putting the share part in. Okay. Hello, directors. For those who don't know me, I'm Amber Hellstrom. We've been working on this new training website. It's been me, Marie, and Lisa. We've attended meetings. We've learned how to use it. It's a great site. And I think we're ready to introduce it to you guys, and hopefully you'll enjoy it and use it and go at it. So I am an IT analyst for the State Charter School Board. I currently help build the web application Utah Charter Access Point, which we usually just call UCAP. And you guys are probably familiar with that because that's where you can get charter information and submit your projections and other stuff like that. So today I'll be introducing GBOT. It stands for Governing Board Online Training. This will be the website we will use for training purposes. GBOT is a software tool used as a learning management system. It will allow us to manage trainings, courses, quizzes, add videos, other materials. It is preloaded with trainings currently, and these are offered by Saba. But it will also allow us to add our own. So you'll see those more in the future. Use the website URL. So the one listed in orange right there to get to GBOT. Your username will be the email that's saved with your UCAP user account. So if you're unsure what your username is, just contact me or Lisa and we can look it up for you. Use the temporary password to get in, and then from there you can reset your password to whatever you want. Passwords can only be changed once in a 24-hour period. That kind of is a stickler to me. We're gonna try to change that so you can change it as much as you'd like. Also, if you are a new employee within like the last 6 months, like please contact me or Lisa or Marie, and we can get you set up with a new account for this GPOT training website. If you know your username and you don't remember the temporary password, or you just don't remember what you saved as your password, go ahead and just use the forgot password link. Type in your username, and a temporary password will be sent to your email address. This email will show up in your inbox, or it could possibly be in your junk folder. So GBOT comes with a wide range of courses. Some you might find useful, some not. These are the categories. Feel free to browse, use any trainings you like. SESB staff plans on adding more. I know one in the foreseeable future is the Open and Public Meetings Act training, and so we hope to put it in here. Our trainings will be held in the governance categories, so that's where you can find SESB trainings. Once you are logged in, at the top you can use the browse functionality to find trainings, or there's a search bar and you can type in the keyword that you're looking for. Is there any questions so far? I can see what you mean where you can't see the chat when you're speaking. Marie, is everyone good?
Amber, there was one question. They were wondering if board members will also be given access to GBOT.
Board members. I think we did.
Yes, we have enough licenses for all of our directors and board members and anyone else that you'd like to get on here and do some training, or training for your own school, training from us, recording things. So you'll have a lot of great options and flexibility in using the GBOT.
I would even say if you guys know a good training that you think other schools would like, let us know and we might be able to put it in too. Yeah, good question. So is that the only one so far?
That's the only one so far.
Okay, cool. All right, so I just wanted to mention another website that you guys can use for trainings, and it's Pluralsight. It is very popular. I'm sure you've heard of it. But we also have licenses to Pluralsight, so I just wanted to mention it. We can give you access to Pluralsight. These accounts are intended for school staff, teachers, IT professionals, administrators, and guidance counselors. Pluralsight offers over 10,000 video trainings in technology development. These include like cloud, security, IT, data. Pluralsight is a great tool for computer science and technology staff, but it can also be used to learn more about like Photoshop or Microsoft Office products like PowerPoint. So it's not just limited to technology staff. If you would like an account to Pluralsight, or like a group of your staff to have it, please just contact me. I will need to know each user's email address and then what LEA they work with. Then I can create their Pluralsight accounts, and they should expect an email to finish it up. Lisa, did you want to show GBOT?
Yep, so I'm gonna give them a little bit of a tour. So if you'll stop sharing, I will share my screen. All right. Okay. So I am going to give you a tour. And I'm hoping you're gonna see what I want you to see. Looks like we are. Okay, so this is the actual website, and as you can see, I've started to log in here. And it has that URL that Amber talked about. And I am going to get in here really quick, I hope. And there's that forgot password if you have forgotten it. And whenever you reset your password, you'll actually, of course it didn't work. Okay. Whenever you reset your password, you will be taken to a screen after you get in that will have you go ahead and reset it. All right. Wow. Okay, I'm going to show you this really quick. So if you forget the URL and you come over here to the GBOT, to UCAP, there is actually a link in UCAP that will get you to the URL. It's this governing board online training. So it didn't help me get in, but I did want to make sure you had it. There you go. I can't, I'm not good under pressure, guys, sorry. All right, I think I can do this time. Yay, okay, there we go. All right, so once you get in, and hopefully it'll be easier for you than it was for me, you come to this landing page, which is basically a dashboard of what you've been doing. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of information on what these little tiles are here. This first one is My Learning. And so right now we are only using the courses that come with Saba or Cornerstone, which is the name of the system. Like Amber said, we'll put some in later, so you'll see different things. But right now, if you've started a course, you're going to see it here. So this is a course that I've started. I didn't finish it. If I wanted to go back to it, I could hit this launch button and it would take me right there. I could click here and get more details, or I could actually just click here and it'll give me more details about the course. And the reason I want to show you this, if you look at this and you look at this information with the name of the course, if you see these icons, this means that you have access to it from a mobile app, which I'll show you in a little bit as well. So that's available. Then it gives you just a little information and it tells you that you're in progress. So that's just what you can get to when you click on the course. It also shows you if you've completed any learning, you'll see it here. And as you can see, I did take a class, I was successful. So it's showing here. Then you get a plan summary that just kind of gives you the same information in a different form and allows you to go to what's called your plan. And we'll do that in a second. And then as you get to using it, there's this leaderboard and it's going to give you, it's going to show you who is tops and taking the courses and finishing them. And you kind of get a little competition going on here if you like. If you want to be at the top of that leaderboard, just take a few more courses and it'll get you up here, up there. A couple of other things I wanted to show you on this page is there is a support button. If you find that you need support for the system, rather than going here, I would actually recommend that you call us or get in touch with us and let us know what your issue is, and we'll work on getting it resolved for you. Another thing is you'll find there is a link to our website here. So if you click on that, it'll take you directly there. So just a couple of things that are there. And then if you look up here in this corner, you'll find that there's this little icon. And right now you can see that it shows I have two of something here. And if you look in here, there's a message center. So if you if you have enrolled in a class, it's going to give you a notification letting you know that you have enrolled. You'll also get an email about it, letting you know that you enrolled. The emails come from GBot. So if you see something from GBot, that's us. That's what this system is. So you know that that's what it is. So it's just kind of giving me some information about some courses that I've enrolled in and what's going on with those. And it shows there was one that I dropped, so it shows I dropped it. And then also in here, you have an opportunity to change your password if you decide you want to. So that's here. The other thing I want to show you is we're talking about the mobile access to this. So if you look in here and you come down to downloads, it's going to take you to this screen. And there are three things in here. You want to focus on this top one, the Corner SBX mobile application for iOS. And it gives you just simple instructions on how you can go in and get the app and get registered for it. You can also generate a QR code. I did this a while ago when I put it on, and I think it took me directly to the app. Yeah, the App Store where I could download it, I believe. So that's just how you would go about getting your mobile app set up. Now let's talk about a little bit about the courses. So I'm just going to go back to that home page. You can do that from that icon there. And if you want to look for a class, you know kind of what you want to look at. Like I'm an accountant, so of course I'm looking at accounting. And it'll take you to this page, and it'll show you there are 17 results found for accounting. There are extra filters you can use. Really, other than the category one right now, they're not real helpful. So that's the one I recommend if you're looking for something and you want to go further in, you know, like if we looked at a category for compliance, it would take us from 17 to 5 results. So I'm just going to clear that. Another thing I wanted to show you, we do have the ability to feature a course. So if there's a course that we think you might benefit from and you might want to take, but you don't have to take it, it's just we're thinking it might be helpful for you, we can do what's called featured it. If a course is featured, it's going to have this little diamond here. It's not very noticeable, I know, but I will show you another place where you can find it. But so you can look at anyway, so that shows you if it's featured. Then you can also see how long the course is. So on this one, it's 1 hour and 10 minutes. This one's 10 minutes. This one's only 1 minute. So there are long courses, there are short, just a couple minutes that you can take and just gives you general information. So there's lots of opportunities for in-depth learning to just simple questions answered kind of things maybe. So that's there. If you want to register for a course, you'll click on it, it'll show you're not registered. Right now, because these are just, you open the training and you take it, it's not a registration kind of thing per se. You can just launch the course. It now is going to open. You can take it now. If you decide, oh, you know what, for some reason, I don't have time to finish it, then you can just click up here to the close button. And then you will see if you go back and look at your plan, you can now see that it's under your plan. So when you want to go back to it, if you didn't have the time to finish it, you just go back to that main page, launch it again, and you can go ahead and take it from there. Once you have finished a course, you actually have an opportunity where you can print out a certificate for it. That wasn't where it was. There are so many different places you can do different things, but I do want to show you. If you go to my plan, you get extra kind of information over here on the end. You can see your completed learning. And from here, if you wanted to print a certificate, you would have the option to do that, or you'd have the option to retake the class if you like, whatever you want to do. If you look at your profile on your plan, you have the option to edit it. There's really not much you can edit here, your name or business information. So you can do it, but not really probably something you'd use. And then it gives you if you want to look at the history of what you've been learning and what you've done, you can see it here. Rewards, once we get the classes that we're going to be offering up and running, you're going to have opportunities to earn badges and do some fun things there. There are options available that are called playlists. If you find a playlist that you want, and I'll show you where you can look for those, they offer different courses. So authenticity, it's one of the values of the SCSB. So I thought, well, that will be interesting. So I went and I looked at the playlist and saw these different courses. So they're ranging from 6 minutes to 48 minutes. So if I want to take a couple of those and I just have a few minutes, I can do that. I can launch it, take it. And if I want to come back later, I do have this under my playlist that I'm following, and I can find it there. So you would find the playlists. The best way I have found is just click in the learning category. Instead of putting anything in, I click this, it takes you directly to the playlist, and you can, under this learning type, you can just click on playlists. There are 66. So you'll see them under there. But again, if you want just a general class, you can find it here, or you can come to browse, which Amber talked a little bit about, and you can browse by the different categories. Also, if you go to the learning category or the learning catalog here, this is where you can find that featured learning. If we featured something for you, you can also find new learning here. So those are things you can do. Also, if you've started a class and let's see, classes 2. Let's go back to that accounting one. Sorry. So if I click on a class to do it, I launch it. Like I said, if I don't want to take it, I decide I don't have time, I can close it. Whoops. Close it, come back to it later. Or if I decide I don't want to take it all, I can just completely drop it. And yes, and then it'll ask a reason why, and that'll just come up if you're looking at a class you dropped in the audit section, you could see it there. But so you can easily add classes, you can easily drop them, you can look at your plan, excuse me, to see what's going on, and it helps you know where you're at in things, come back to it later. Go here, print a certificate, see how you're doing against other people. That's just a general overview of what's going on, how it works. It's really pretty simple and straightforward for you, but there's a lot in there, a lot of good things that you can look at. And are there any questions on that I can help with?
I think they're all just so excited, Lisa, to get in and start learning. I think you mentioned it before, but there's over 40,000 courses in here. And so I've yet to find something that I could not find a training on. And I think that'll be really valuable for our schools. So thank you so much. All right. Well, again, thank you, Amber. Thank you, Lisa. We are excited to roll that out to our schools and your boards, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as we have. I now am going to turn our time. Debbie, do you want to introduce our speaker?
Yeah, I'll just take a couple of quick minutes. I'm here on behalf of Shannon Greer. She's the training director for the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. She had arranged for this training today, coordinating with Marie with a grant that we hold from the State Charter School Board. We're excited to bring in Nathan Curitan. For those that have been around for a while, Tiny, you might be familiar with him. He's very engaging. He's a lead consultant at Innovations Ed. And I believe today he's going to provide a training on building classroom cultures of success. Did I get that right?
That's right. Sounds good, Debbie. Thanks.
Okay. And then later on in the chat, we are going to put a link for your feedback on the training. With the grant, we do value your feedback. So be watching for that there. If you can just take a minute and fill that out, Shannon would appreciate that. Thank you. And with that, we'll turn it over to Nathan.
All right, let me share my screen here. Hey, do we need to, you guys have been in a meeting for quite a while. Do you need to stand and stretch real quick? Because we got about 90 minutes together. So what if you take 30 seconds, stand and stretch, get the wiggles out. And also you'll notice in the chat, I just put a link for a copy for some guided notes today. You can use them or not. It's just up to you. So a little stand and stretch. I'll take a drink while you do that. All right, as you're coming back together, hey, I want you to know that I absolutely value your time. I've been a charter school administrator. I know how busy you are. And so we have about 90 minutes planned together today. And I want to make it as absolutely as influential, meaningful to you as possible. So part of that is generally I do trainings in person with people. So we do lots of interactive activities. Zoom is an entirely different animal. And so there'll only be one or two small interactive things we'll do. Most of it is going to be contrary to my normal thing where I'm just going to be delivering material. So I hope that you'll stay engaged, listening, learning as we go through and talk. So let's jump in. At the beginning, so like I said, partner discussion, I really don't believe in death by PowerPoint, but we won't do a partner discussion. If we were in person, we would. But here's a question I wanted to ask you. If you go all the way back to the beginning of your career, right? Was it 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago? Just consider for a moment, why did you first choose to become an educator, right? Do you remember that time? All those years ago, why you first choose to become an educator? Well, I've asked this question to thousands of teachers and educators as I've traveled the region to train. And you know the response I almost always get? I became an educator for the... Of course, that's not true, right? I know, maybe you can be a grocery store celebrity, but that's about it. Or here's another one, standardized tests. Said nobody, right? They're important, they craft it, but yet there's some challenges there. Or maybe you've heard this one, I became an educator for 3 reasons. They are June, July, and August. You heard that one before? Now, I'm also talking to a group of administrators. You don't get the summers off, do you? I know how busy you are. No, in fact, what I'd like us to do is we're going to do just real quick, this is going to be our one interactive thing. If you'll go to, let me come over here, menti.com. And I'm going to move this thing. I can't see it. So let's pull it over this way. I'm going to unstop sharing just for a moment, pull this over here. And we're going to start sharing again. Good. Everybody's going to menti.com, hopefully. Oh, there it is. And if you've been there, will you go menti.com, or you can scan that QR code and then you'll click in that response. So 19171986. Once you're in, I'd like you, I want to get a feel for where everybody's at as an educator. So will you answer this question in 1 or 2 words? Describe why you first chose to become an educator, and just type in that response. It's going to create a word cloud for us. Let's see how it goes. I like it. Impact, inspire. Impact students to inspire students, make a difference. The kids inspire students, culture of learning. This is good. This word cloud, if we duplicate the same thing, it will make that word particular a little bit more big. But if we look here, you'll notice that nobody is putting in anything quite like, hey, I want to make, oh, I'm at my own school. I'm getting an announcement.
Eliza Polson, the front office.
So as we do this, when we go back to the very beginning of why we chose to be a teacher, it is not for June, July, and August. It's not simply to pay the bills, although of course we wouldn't do this for free. At the end of the day, we became a teacher for the kids. Love it. Okay, so I'm going to close off this, come back here, and let's see if you agree with this. Marva Collins, a renowned inner city educator, says, I am a teacher. There is no magic here. I do not walk on water. I do not part the sea. I just love children. And as I come around and train in schools, I feel like half of my battle is simply to remind people why you got into this in the first place. It is hard to be a teacher. It's hard to be a principal. I've been in both of your shoes. And sometimes we can get bogged down with some of those challenges and the bureaucracy that come with running a school. Yet here we are at the end of the day, we're in it for kids. If you have a copy of the guided notes that was previously emailed, or I put it in the group chat, you'll see on there that up at the top, there's a place for you to write down your personal action plan. Today in our time together, we're going to discuss way more information than what you can actually apply everything of. My hope is by the time we're done, you come away with 3 to 5 action steps, specific things that you can apply in your schools to be a better leader. So if you didn't have the notes, hopefully you're grabbing a piece of paper and just jot down some notes as we go. Your action plan, and beware, I'll follow up at the end, just like any good teacher would do. So let's jump in and establish the foundation of our conversation today. The fact that these 3 words are absolutely vital to every one of your schools. Culture influences choice. You might want to jot those words down. The culture that's in our schools influences the choices made by our teachers, our staff, and our students. So, for instance, let's look at some data outside of education to prove this principle true. And then we'll go back into education. So systemic poverty. Children born in poverty are 10 times more likely to be poor as adults. 10 times, right? Why is that? Well, as the research will tell us, and also our own intuition, what we see is often replicated. It's the culture in which these individuals are living, and therefore, when it's their turn to provide for themselves, that's often where it comes from. Here's another one, eating disorders. Family members of those with anorexia are 11 times more likely to have anorexia themselves. Again, we see and replicate. Culture influences choice. It doesn't dictate choice. The world is full of comeback stories of people overcoming challenges. But if we can create a culture that pushes people in the right direction, they're much more likely to succeed. Thus, let's look at the kids now. Let's apply it right to our own classrooms. Here are the students in your school. What do we want from them, everybody? Well, we want them to learn. We want them to strive their best, to become leaders, to think critically. And at the end of the day, folks, we want these kids to succeed. Now, will you tell me, in what culture are these kids most likely going to achieve these ideals? What if their teachers look like this? Think about you as a student in that classroom. Are you going to want to take chances and risks with that oppressive, mean, dictatorship sort of approach to our classrooms? Or perhaps the teacher looks like this: kind, professional, encouraging, approachable. That is what's going to help our students learn, grow, move, take a chance, and ultimately succeed in what we would like to do. Now, here I am. I'm not talking to a group of teachers. I'm talking to a bunch of charter school directors. I've been in your shoes, and I know how hard it is. Let's apply this. Let's say those two teachers are actually directors, and here are your teachers. In what environment in your school are your teachers most likely to do those same things, to strive their best, to think critically, to go outside the box, to become leaders, and ultimately be successful in their classrooms? You, as a director, are the number one most important person in your school. I cannot overstate that. And why? Because you are the culture setter. You are the most important person, where it all trickles down to the rest of your staff. who will then trickle it down to the students. So what's the culture in your school? I'm confident that most everybody here as moving forward, trying their best to create a culture of success. And yet there are likely areas of improvement in which we would like to work on today. Dr. Glenn Latham, he is a best-selling author and a former professor at Utah State. He says, behavior is largely a product of immediate environment. Folks, right here, right now in your schools. Have you ever noticed how a student acts one way in one classroom and then walks across the hall, acts differently in a different classroom? Same kid, different behavior. It's because of the culture the teacher sets. The same thing can happen in our school at large. We are the owners of the culture and we can move it forward. So in our conversation today, we're going to discuss 4 principles of how to create a culture of success that empowers people to choose success for themselves. 4 principles are: number 1, raise expectations. Number 2, strengthen relationships. Number 3, motivate from within. And lastly, reinforce the positive. Hey, full disclosure, principle number 4, I find it unlikely that we're going to get to today. And so perhaps I'm going to be doing another training here in a couple of months. Perhaps we can touch on that one at that point. If we have time, we'll get to it. But we're likely going to hit the first 4. Okay? And you'll see that in your guided notes. All this information, by the way, comes from a book that I published a number of years ago called Empowered. It's a novel for teachers. And so I set up a fictitious school with stereotypical challenges that teachers face, and they learn these principles over the course of the novel. And I train schools. Good. So our roadmap today for each of the 4 principles, we're going to do number 1, learn the principle. Number 2, apply it to school culture, you as the leaders, as directors to your school. And then number 3, apply it to class culture. We're going to spend minimal time on number 3 because my audience is primarily school directors, but you are also, of course, educational leaders in your school. And so it's nice to look at it from a classroom level, but the bulk of our conversation will focus as a school entire culture. All right, so to introduce our very first principle, I'd like to consult the great sage of our day, the wonderful educator of them all, Calvin, from Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin says this, and he's got his friend here. He says to the friend, hey, what grade did you get? To which she replies, I got an A. Really, boy, I'd hate to be you. I got a C. To which she replies, why on earth would you rather get a C than an A? Then, of course, Calvin says, the great lesson. I find my life is a lot easier the lower I keep everyone's expectations. Now, of course, Calvin's teaching a profound principle, but he's teaching it in reverse. We don't want to lower the expectations, lower the bar in our school. No, instead, we want to do principle number 1, raise the expectations. So let's look at this together. Doug Lemov, in his book, Teach Like a Champion, I'm going to quote a number of books. If I could only recommend one book, this would be it. Teach Like a Champion, so good. He says one consistent finding of academic research is that high expectations among teachers are the most reliable driver of achievement for students, right? You guys got into this business to see kids succeed. And so if we want them to achieve, to succeed, we need to raise the expectations behaviorally and academically. Now, let's look at some research to show if this is true. We're going to go way back to 1965. There's a group of researchers, Rosenthal and Jacobson, and they set out to answer this question. Will higher expectations increase student growth? Now, intuitively, we think yes, but let's look at some research. And so this is groundbreaking research. It's been replicated over and over. So here's what they did. Rosenthal and Jacobson went to a bunch of schools, and at the beginning of the year, they administered a pre-aptitude test to all of the students. Then they randomly selected 20% of those students and went to the teachers and said, hey, teachers, these specific kids, the data shows that they are growth spurters on the verge of great gains. Where you and I know in reality, that wasn't the case. They were just random students, no different than anybody else. So what happened over the course of the year was these researchers from that initial conversation manipulated the teacher's expectations of those 20% of those students. So whether they realized it or not, these students got bigger in the eyes of the teachers. They treated them a little differently. They believed that they could succeed and thus held them to higher expectations. So the year proceeds. They get to the end of the year, the researchers return and administer post-aptitude tests. And what do you think? When they looked at the data, they looked at the scores, did those 20% outperform everybody else? And the answer is a big fat yes, they did. In fact, they significantly outperformed the other students. So again, this research has been replicated over and over. This was kind of a groundbreaking research into this field. And ultimately, Rosenthal and Jacobson and subsequent researchers came up with what they call the Pygmalion effect. This kind of goes back to the Greek god Pygmal. We're not going to talk about him at this point, but you see on this little graph here what they learned. If you start at the top, it says our beliefs about others influence our actions towards them, whether we do it consciously or not. We believe they can succeed, therefore we treat them as such, or vice versa. We believe they're going to fail, and so we treat them that way. Then we come down, our actions towards them then influence their beliefs about themselves. My teacher believes I can do it. Or if I am a teacher, my principal believes that I can succeed. And then that will influence their own actions and then their beliefs about themselves, which then reinforces the initial belief, the Pygmalion effect. Very interesting. You've heard of the term self-fulfilled prophecy, right? Going back to your EdPsych days. This is what I would call leader-fulfilled prophecy, right? We're the leaders of others, and what we believe can in turn help that to come into reality. Thus, here's what I believe about our schools. Way too often, I spend time as a school consultant. I spend a lot of time in schools, both doing trainings and in classrooms, doing analyses. And I visited with visiting teams, doing lots of analysis in classrooms. And I see regularly that way too often, if the state bar is here, we teach lower. We teach down here. Why? Because we don't want to leave anyone behind. And we want to make sure that everybody's all moving with us. So what do? We cap the learning of many. We say, no, you can't go more than this. In reality, I believe we should do the opposite. We should hold students to higher standards, and our teachers, if the state standards here, we should teach up here. And then help accommodate those who are struggling. Now, this might look very different in different schools, but the principle nonetheless is true. Let's focus on the high. What does that look like for teachers? You, as school leaders, let's expect high performance from our teachers and support them in doing so. I'm going to give you some strategies a little later on for that. So there's the principle, right? So our roadmap, step one was the principle of raising expectations. Mindset, my guess is many of you are familiar with that book. If you haven't read that one, I've got it right here. Carol Dweck, you really ought to, what do we do here? You really ought to read this, okay? She says the best thing teachers can do is to teach students to love challenges, be intrigued by mistakes, and enjoy effort. My books say when in doubt, err on the high side. Students can perform at a much bigger, higher level than are often given credit. Let's pause. Right where you're at your computer, you're in your office. Will you just pause and ponder for a moment? Do you believe this? Do you believe these two quotes in this research to be true? Can students genuinely achieve higher? I can't see your faces, but I can feel nods. And good, you should. I hope you believe it. Thus, let's now apply what we're discussing directly to you as school leaders, okay? Not just to students, but to the teachers and the staff in your school. How can you successfully create this culture of high expectations in your school? These are some good things to take some notes on. So 3 primary suggestions. Number 1, visibility. Visibility. Have you heard this term before? Management by wandering around. When I was a charter school administrator, this is hard. I tried to do this best as I could and didn't do it quite as well as I would have liked. As we're out there, as we're visible, as we're seen, it is much more likely for our teachers to raise the bar. Look at it from a teacher's perspective. You, as educational leaders, often teach your teachers to be up and moving. Don't just sit at your desk. Don't give an assignment and then go sit at your desk. But no, teachers should be up and moving. Why? Because simply that proximity encourages greater effort. So I would encourage you to find ways to be visible. Now, I know that you have endless meetings and 100 emails a day, and that might be an understatement. I understand the pull of your office. So that said, I would encourage you to schedule specific times in your calendar and, give it to your secretary. Don't schedule a meeting during this time. I'm going to be up and moving, and have it be during high traffic times, before school, after school, during lunch, during transitions if you're a secondary school, and just be up and moving. You'll see great things happening. Okay, hopefully you're taking notes, and remember that action plan at the beginning. Is this potentially something that you could do better on? If you feel so, you may want to jot that down as a potential goal area. Okay, number 2, accountability. Accountability. So on this one, we want to be in and offering those observations. Observation and feedback cycles. Now, we could do an entire training just on this alone, and that's not my intent today. But basically what I'm encouraging you is to, if you haven't yet created a system, create a system of observation and feedback cycles. So you as a leader are in classrooms offering feedback, but lots of positive, lots of encouraging feedback, and as well as a few suggestions. There is power in that. And they can even be quick pop-ins, right? Now, of course, we could share lots of ideas of how to do this effectively. My guess is you already do a number of things. But if this is something to work on and improve on, being in classrooms more, you should work on that. I've asked so many principals and directors over the years, are you comfortable with the amount of time you're in classrooms? The almost universal answer is no. I want to be in classrooms more. So perhaps that's a goal area for you. Okay, and the last one, support. Now, it's one thing to just expect more of our teachers, but even better, we got to support them along the way, help them feel comfortable and safe, and supporting them in reaching that. So, for instance, time. These teachers should have enough time to prep, to work. And so their prep time is absolutely sacred. Interrupt it as minimally as possible. Make sure your faculty meetings are absolutely worthwhile time spent. And if there is no need for a faculty meeting, if instead you can send a well-worded memo instead of a meeting, do it, right? Respect the time of your teachers. They will love you for it and ultimately raise the bar. Resources. Make sure they've got what they need in their classroom. I know money is always a struggle in a school setting, but as much as you can, make sure they have what they need to be successful. And then lastly, A+ professional development. As a longtime teacher myself, I've been in the business for nearly 2 decades at this point. I need at times I need professional development to spark something new. You know, when you go to a conference and sometimes it feels like, boy, about 80% of the workshops you go to are maybe good, but maybe meh. That 10 to 20% that are stellar professional development, capitalize on that. Bring them to your school or send your teachers to them. High quality PD is great. And may I just put in a small little plug? I've been to so many conferences over the years as a participant and as a presenter. I've done keynotes and whatnot. UAPCS conference just might be my favorite. I don't know if you agree or not, but I love UAPCS conference. Okay. Now, so all that, let's pause for a moment here. I want to give you about 1 minute to do a quick jot in your notes or on that piece of paper you've got. Well, each of you take a moment and ponder the expectations you have for your teachers in your school and write down at least one thing that you can do to improve. I'm going to give you just less than a minute to do that. All right. Good. I hope that you have something concrete to take away. Now, let's just briefly look at this from the perspective of a teacher. Okay, you are educational leaders. You're the most important person in the school. How can teachers raise the bar for their students in their classrooms? Rigor, right? They should teach on the outer end of the zone of proximal development, going back to your EdPsych days. When I do workshops for teachers, we get in depth on these things. Pacing. Oh, pacing is huge. You've been in classrooms, you know how it goes. If we go at a snail's pace, the students will be so distracted and they won't succeed. No, bell to bell. Even if you don't have bells in your school, like you're in elementary school or something, the same concept is there. The second they walk in the classroom, we are working, and all the way to the second we're done, maximizing our time. Procedures, I teach teachers how to teach procedures so that we can move from one thing to the next really quickly in our transitions. And then just speed in the classroom. Let's just go. Well, let's fly in the class. And we'll talk a lot about that with teachers. That one middle section there, we could spend half an hour on if we had the time. And last one, engagement. I do an entire training on engagement. OTR means opportunities to respond. The research says 4 or more opportunities to respond for students a minute. A minute. I just did I did a keynote for all of Duchesne District a couple of months ago, and the whole training was on OTR. And anyway, they came out awesome. It was really good. Next, tech. We engage students with good technology and make sure the content is relevant to them. They know the whys, not just the whats. We learned that if we know the why of anything, I can do almost any how. Okay, cool. Hopefully that's a little bit of information for teachers, but again, my audience here is directors, so I'm cruising through that. To wrap up this principle, let's take this quote old school quote from Goethe. Love this quote. You may want to jot it down. Treat a man as he is, and he will remain as he is. Treat a man as he has the potential to become, and you will make him better than he is. Right? We can do this. Our students can do it. Our staff can do it. Let's hold each other to high standards, and good things are likely to follow. All right, friends. So that's principle number 1. I'm ready to move on. Okay. So let's move on to the next part. High expectations. Let me show you 2 educators. You tell me yes or no. Do they have high expectations? Do you remember her? From the movie Matilda, that's Miss Trunchbull. Ask yourself, did she have high expectations for her staff? Yeah, she did. But would you want to follow? Ooh, that's debatable. What about this guy, Mr. Kimball from Kindergarten Cop? Now, he ultimately changed, became a fabulous teacher, but at the beginning, he had high expectations. He was intimidating. He yelled. He wanted the best from students, but it didn't work. It didn't work. Why not? Well, this leads us to another quote from Mindset. Carol Dweck says, simply raising standards without giving students the means of reaching them is a recipe for disaster. It just pushes students into failure and out of school. Is there a way to set standards high and have students reach them? Well, the answer, of course, is yes, because schools are doing it all over the state. So how can we have high standards and not be the Mr. Kimballs in our schools, the evil, mean, domineering sort of individual? So this leads us to principle number 2, strengthen relationships. Principles 1 and 2 work together synergistically to create a phenomenal culture of success that empowers people to raise their bar. So let's get in here. And to do so, I want to tell a little story. I hope this is okay. I'm going to tell two stories of two leaders. Back in the day, I graduated with an education degree from BYU, Idaho, right when it first became BYU, Idaho. So many, many years ago. And I student taught, this is me as a student teacher at Rocky Mountain Middle School in Idaho Falls, Idaho. And had a good experience there. My wife is from Idaho. And so after I'd finished student teaching, I was hired at the university to teach in the foreign language department. So I was working there as an adjunct. And then, but I was preparing to take my first job as a full-time teacher that August. So my wife is from Idaho, and we didn't want to leave Idaho. So I only went to apply to 2 school districts in Idaho Falls and one in Pocatello. And so I went down to a teacher fair. It was actually in the same building where my office was at the university. And I went and put in my application to those 2 school districts. And then off I went. I got a call from both, had interviews at both. And I want to tell you about the interview at one of them. I walked in for the interview. It was about 20 minutes long. And it was the most intimidating situation I'd ever been in. It was a panel of district administrators. There were 7 of them. This is not the actual people. And they were in a big semicircle on risers. They were like 2 feet above me. And in the middle of the semicircle was a stool, not a chair, but a stool for me to sit on. I walked in, took a deep breath, gave them each my resume, sat down on the stool and said, okay, let's go. And I did my best in a very intimidating situation. Well, later that day, they gave me a call, offered me the job. I said, great, thank you so much. Can you wait 2 days? Because I have another interview. I want to tell you about the other interview. Go back actually to the job fair at BYU, Idaho. There was a 3rd school that I went to that I hadn't planned on it. I was walking out of the room, heading back to my office when a nice old man caught my eye. And I found myself turning, going back towards him. And there I met who would soon become one of my greatest mentors. His name is Eldon Budge. He's the principal at Thomas Edison Charter School in Cache Valley, Utah, where I currently am right now. This is my classroom at Thomas Edison. And he caught my eye. I didn't even know what a charter school was at that point. You've had that discussion 100 times, right? Let me define what a charter. I was one of those, I didn't know what it was. And he told me what it was, and I left him with an application. He called me down for an interview to Cache Valley. I'd never set foot in Cache Valley before. I went down there and I spent the entire day with Eldon. It was a dual interview. I interviewed him just as much as he was interviewing me. I felt comfortable. I felt calm. He was kind. He was nice. He was interested in me. And at the end of the day, he offered me the job. And I said, can I have just a little bit to think about it? He said, yeah. So on my drive home that day, I called my wife, told her about my experience. And she says, well, what job do you think you want to take? And I said, well, this is a mutual decision, but I'm kind of leaning towards that charter school thingy. And then she says, you know what? I feel the same. Let's do it. I took the job at Cache Valley. I moved my family down, and I've never looked back. I absolutely love not only the charter school movement. I'm an advocate for school choice, but I'm so grateful for Eldon, who became a mentor to me. Over the course of time, he tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, you should get your master's degree and work to be an administrator. So I did. And I was a school administrator at Thomas Edison for a number of years. And yet right before I became principal, I decided to go back to the classroom. That's where my heart really was. And so that's where I am now. I am forever grateful for Eldon. I have often said that besides my own father, he's probably had the most of any other man, the most positive influence in my life. Now, Eldon has since retired. He's replaced by Melanie, who's probably somewhere on this call. Hi, Melanie. I saw your name earlier. She is equally a remarkable friend and amazing leader. So look at these 2 experiences. We've got the panel, intimidating. We've got Eldon, kind yet high standards. This leads to the question, who am I more likely to follow? And the answer is obvious, right? I feel much more comfortable in one situation. I feel there's trust, there's a connection, there's a mutual understanding. And if Eldon asked me to do something, I'd do it. In fact, I did. I went and got a master's degree just because he told me to. I'm so grateful for him. Let's think about you now and your teachers, your relationships with them. How is your relationship with your staff like a cord? This is a powerful metaphor that if we were all together in person, I'd love to have some conversation, some group work, pair shares, all discussions, and yet Zoom is limiting. So maybe I'll throw out a few ideas. Your relationships with each of your staff members is like a cord because you grab one side, they grab another, and the idea would be that you have a strong enough connection that you can give a gentle nudge in the right direction and they'll eagerly follow you, right? Can you push a rope? If you push a rope, nothing happens. This honors agency. We cannot coerce people into success. You cannot sit your staff members down and say, you will do it or else, right? I suppose you could, but is that going to create a culture of success where they choose to be great of their own accord? No. Also, you'll notice, I love that little image that it wraps around. So right now we're mid-October. And right now at the beginning of a year, especially if you have new staff, you're just sending out small little cords that are weak. But then over the course of time, the more interactions you have, the stronger the cord becomes, and to the point where that relationship can be unbreakable. Also notice that the analogy is not a net. It's a cord. One-on-one. It's easy to be in a faculty meeting and throw out this big compliment. I love you all. You're all so wonderful. Trying to do the net approach. And though that's not necessarily poor, there's a much better way, which is an individual connection one-on-one between every staff member. Do you know their name? Do you know something about them? Do you know what's important to them? Do you know what their strengths and weaknesses are? And do they know that you know it? That cord will then strengthen and enable you to bring them up to your high expectations, principle 1. Remember the old adage, you reap what you sow. So my charter school director friends, invest now, invest in those relationships. If you do so, they will reward you with uncommon effort and success. The administrators that I've worked for, both Eldon and Meilani, I have 100% trust in them. And I know that they trust me 100% because they've communicated that. We have that good connection to the point where they ask me to do anything, I'll do it for the most part, right? Anything within reason, because they've invested in that relationship. Have you invested in relationships with your staff? Now, another little point on this principle. There's a spectrum here. All of us interact with people on the spectrum. Some are on the spectrum. On one side, we got the buds category, right? It's just to hey, we're buds, we're buddies, we're pals. Hey, man, what's up? We're kind of on the same level over on that side of the spectrum. On the other side of the spectrum is a simple term I call biz, right? It's all about business. We're uber professional. We're stoic. We're almost have this unapproachable demeanor. So we got two sides to the spectrum. My question, or where do we want to be? Well, obviously not on either extreme. Instead, we want to be somewhere in the middle. We want to be approachable and kind, but we need to be professional. We cannot raise somebody to a higher level if we're not there ourselves. And so where should we be? Somewhere in the middle. Now, why is this an important thing to consider? Because on a bad day, all of us err on one side or the other. I'd like for you to ponder the question, that question. On a bad day, where do you err? Are you on the buds side or are you on the biz side? For me personally, both as an administrator and a teacher, I tend to err on the buds side. This is part of my human makeup. I wanted my staff and I want my students to like me. I want to have that good connection. And so we laugh, we smile, we tell jokes, and to the point where it is potential on a bad day where that actually could become a bad thing. So what's a strategy I personally do to bring me back to the middle? Personally, every day I wear a tie. Every day. I teach middle school, 7th and 8th grade English. And every day I wear a tie to work. Not because anybody told me to, just because I make that choice. Number one, to honor my students, right? I feel like they deserve my best, and the tie is dressing for success. And then number two, it's a reminder to me, hey, don't be just buddies, right? This is a professional environment, Nathan. Make sure you treat it as such. Of course, there's strategies to bring it back the other way as well. Consider that for yourself. Perhaps this is something for you to jot down on your action plan. Okay. Now, with all this said, I want to just briefly show you this. If you're able to take a screenshot right now, or actually it should have been emailed out previously, some key slides. This slide is on there. I do a 3-hour training on this slide alone. And I just wanted to show it to you. We're not going to have time to get into depth on this, but just wanted to show you how this works. You've got relationships on the x-axis. You've got expectations on the y. And it creates this really powerful grid with unimaginably powerful insights for schools. Of course, where we want to be is in the green, right? With strong relationships and high expectations. That is where our staff and our students will absolutely thrive. The culture will be rich, full of educational nutrition, if you will, in order for them to grow and become what they're destined to become. So good. I wish we could spend more time on this, but I just wanted to show it to you because it's pretty powerful. Okay, now we're getting close to the end of this principle. Let's talk about you, applications to you as directors. Okay, I got 3 suggestions for you. You might want to jot these down. Number 1, first impressions. Did you know what the research says? How many seconds it takes to make a first impression? 7. 7 seconds to make a first impression. And boy, it takes a lot longer to change that. So when you're first hiring a new staff member, teacher, paraprofessional, whoever it may be, we've got, at the very beginning, we got to make a good first impression. So number 1, you might want to analyze your hiring strategies. Are you creating good connections at the beginning? And your hiring strategies should not just be to get the right teacher in your school. It should get the right teacher to also want to be in your school over everybody else. We're in a school choice environment, right? We're in competition with everybody. And so we need to sell ourselves as much as they need to sell them to us. And so from the beginning, let's look at our hiring strategies. Number 2, training. Also from the beginning is what I'm looking at. Let's support those new staff members, our paraprofessionals, our secretaries, our teachers, of course. And from the very beginning, have a robust training program to help get them up to speed. And the last one, support. I would zero in on the new staff. Support them so much from the beginning. Visit their classrooms, send them text messages, offer them feedback, compliments, listen to their concerns. Supporting, zeroing in on those first ones. I've been around long enough that Melanie doesn't need to come into my classroom all the time, although she does come sometimes, and I love when she does. But I don't need it as much, right? With the connections there, we're set, we're good to go. Those new teachers, boy, they need it. Is anything on that list something that you might want to jot down on your action plan? Something to look at? Okay, number 2, QP interactions. That means quadruple P interactions. I've published an article on this, and there's a lot to be talked about here. Do you remember the relationship cord? Every time we interact with somebody, the cord gets stronger to the point where it will ultimately become unbreakable. How do we interact with students, with our staff? That's what we want. So I give you 4 ideas. They all begin with P, so quadruple P interaction. So first, purposeful. You should purposely make the choice to seek somebody out, right? Purposely leave your office and go talk with somebody. Sometimes you could even actually maybe even track it, like have a spreadsheet of all your staff members and the last time you did a certain kind of interaction with them, you visited their classroom or you offered them some sort of compliment. Purposeful. Oh, by the way, purposeful, let me go back to that one. If they come to you to talk, put the work down, put the phone down, put your email down, and purposely look at them and engage. That is a prime moment to strengthen that cord. Next, personalized. Remember, it's not a net, it's a cord, one-on-one, personalized. Next, positive. Every time one of your staff members leaves a conversation with you, they should leave feeling better about themselves. Be a light to your students, be a light to your staff, that person that is positive and encouraging. And lastly, professional. In our attempts to interact with people a lot, it's natural to slide to the buds side. Let's not do that, right? Let's make sure we're always professional, okay? Again, we could talk about this a lot more of what it looks like, but hopefully you get the idea. And the last one is listening. Okay, where's my soapbox? I really want to stand on my soapbox and preach about listening. I believe this is a skill our society is missing to a great degree. And in fact, my heart is hurting right now because I'm just preaching to a computer screen and I would love to listen to you more. Listening is this vital skill to develop relationships. Let me give you 3 quick suggestions on being a better listener. Number 1, heart. Turn your heart to the individual. And I'm not saying metaphorically, like turn your heart to the individual. I mean, like literally, your heart is in your chest. Somebody comes in to talk to you right here. Turn, look at them. Turn your heart, look at them, face them. Not at your phone, not at your computer. There's something powerful about that. Eyes, look them in the eye, right? And don't look through them just thinking about the next thing you're going to say. No. Look them in the eye, truly listen. And the last one, follow up. I mean that in 2 ways. Follow up questions in the moment and afterwards. Let's talk about in the moment. Let's say a staff member comes to your office with a challenge. You've put down the computer, you've turned to them, you've looked them in the eye, you've heard them out, and you're a busy person, and you say, okay, good luck with that. Off you go. Oh, ouch, hurting. Instead, ask a follow-up question. 3 magic words. You might want to jot these 3 words down. Tell me more. Tell me more. Those are 3 magic words. You know how good it feels for an individual's leader to be concerned enough about what I'm saying that they'll say, tell me more. And they'll ask follow-up questions in the moment. It is so powerful. And then the second part of follow-up, come back the next day or the next week or both and say, hey, I've been thinking about what we talked about the other day. Can you tell me, I've been thinking about this. What do you think about that? And re-engage the conversation. You will have a friend for life, a professional friend for life. Okay, good. Let's pause and do another 1-minute quick jot, shall we? 1-minute quick jot. Will you please list on your action plan at least one thing about relationships that you will implement in your schools? I'll give you 1 minute. While you're doing that, if you need to stand and stretch, feel free to do that. I'm standing right now, so I got all the energy in the world. Give you about 20 more seconds. All right, folks, let's move on real quick for teachers. First impressions, same idea for teachers and building relationships. They should know students' names, come up with something inside. I talk to teachers about what that means in great depth. Engagement, good. QP interactions, same thing, is super important for teachers to use QP interactions. 8 to 1, going back to Dr. Glenn Latham, It's 8 positives to every 1 negative. That's what the research shows. I believe at the best day, the best of us, we are 4 to 1. It takes conscious effort to really interact with people on a positive manner, especially if you're teaching squirrely little kids that won't stay in their seats, right? It's so hard to stay positive all the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. There is 1 negative, it's okay. But we teach teachers how to interact in a positive manner, and that really creates a fertile culture in their classrooms for kids to achieve. So, good. All this comes together with a final little quote on relationships. In this book, Dr. Kim Cameron, Positive Leadership, he discusses the heliotropic effect of the positive. He learns, and this is kind of a summative statement there, his thesis. He says, all life forms from bacteria to mammals possess an inclination toward positive energy. A simple example. What do sunflowers do over the course of the day? They follow the sun across the sky, right? Let's you as charter school directors be that sun, be the light in your schools, right? Interact with those in a positive manner. You be the provider of the energy. And then you're going to move people in the right direction up to your high expectations. Love it. Good. Okay, I think we just did a stand and stretch. So let's move on. Okay, our next principle is, okay, we're going to try something new. Everybody, will you please put down your pencils or whatever you're doing, and I want you to fold your arms. Okay, are you folding your arms? Okay, I can't see it, so I hope you are. Now, are you left over right or right over left? I am left over right. Okay. Now what I want you to do is flip them. Flip it. So I'm now right over left. Okay. Now, how does that feel? Does that feel super weird? A little awkward, a little uncomfortable? Okay, good. You can pick your pencil back up. I do this quick thing because principle number 3 at first is going to feel a little awkward. It's going to feel a little uncomfortable. Okay. But don't lose hope. Okay. Even though it feels uncomfortable, ultimately, you're going to come away shaking your head with some really important new ideas. Okay. So remember that relationship cord we were just talking about earlier? Sometimes does it feel a little bit more like that? Hey, by the way, that's not a noose. Right, that's a lasso. So, right, what does that look like? Sometimes, right, kids just don't willingly follow, right? You try to develop this cord and you're like, come on, let's go this way. And they don't even want to follow you. And so what do? You take your lasso, you wrap up those kids and say, come on, kid, I'm dragging you up the path of success. Well, what does that look like in reality in our schools? Let me show you a few examples. Number 1. Bribing with a pizza party. Kid doesn't want to do the project, but if everybody does it and does it well, then we get a pizza party. Okay, I'll just do the minimum to get by so we can have the party. Right. Here's another one. Offering a fun Friday. Hey, if we all do this, then on Friday we can just play, because that pretty much is communicating that learning isn't fun. We only do the boring learning so that we can have fun later. Ooh, here's another one. Threatening to call home. I know your mom. Right. And, okay, I'll obey. There's another one. Forced pep talk, reduced work. Hey, if you do this work, that'll give you less work. And somehow that makes sense. Or my favorite one, all of you elementary school teachers and administrators, or those of you who had been teachers in the elementary school, maybe you've seen this one, filling a jar with warm fuzzies, you know, those little colorful cotton balls, and you stick it in the mason jar every time a kid does something good. And then it grows and grows to the point where you get to the top, and then you earn some fancy reward once we get to the top. All right. Are you feeling a little uncomfortable at the moment? Maybe. Why? Well, if we were all together, I'm confident that many of you would raise your hand and say, yeah, I've done that. I've done that as a teacher. We do that in our school. I know my teachers in my school do this. Some of you may even have your hand in the air and saying, oh yeah, we do this on a school-wide basis. We have an entire school-wide token economy that we do together. And clearly, I'm about to say that's not the greatest thing. So if you're feeling slightly uncomfortable, don't give up on me yet, okay? Do these rewards and threats work? The answer is yes, but only to a certain extent. Stick with me. Let's look at some research. This goes to our third principle: motivate from within, not without, but within. That's the goal. So so motivation in 6 words. If you were to go and look at the whole world and the whole industry of motivation, right? How we motivate people in schools, in business, in homes, parenting. Pretty much you can sum up the motivation strategy in our current time frame in these 6 words. Do this and you'll get that. Do this good thing and you'll get this reward. Or do this bad thing and you'll get this punishment, right? We call those carrots and sticks, right? The carrot we dangle in front of them, do your homework, and then we do it. Or we have the stick prodding them from behind with punishment, okay? Does it work? Does it work? Well, these 2 terms, I know you're familiar with them: extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. Let's go to the old adage. You remember the old adage where it says, if you feed a man or if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. So extrinsic motivation works. It feeds these kids and our staff. If we bribe them with things, it gets them to do a certain amount of work. But what's the problem? Tomorrow, they'll be hungry again. Tomorrow, there's going to be another task to be accomplished. And what if there's no reward attached to it? Whereas intrinsic motivation, we're teaching our staff and our students to fish. They become self-sufficient. They become lifelong learners. You know that education buzzword, right? They are motivated to seek out success of their own accord. That's what we want to build in our schools. So ultimately, carrots and sticks don't work. There is a mountain of research, like literally a mountain of research, maybe not literally, but close to it, that the field of education regularly ignores. I do a full training, a 3-hour training just on this principle alone, and we get into lots of the case studies. It's super intriguing. For our purposes today, let me give you a quick top-level view of a few case studies and researchers who comment on this. So first, Dr. Diane Ravitch, she said this: the first token economy was used in the 1820s in New York as an alternative to corporal punishment. Think about that for a moment. We don't want to beat kids anymore, so instead let's bribe them. It was abandoned by the 1830s as the extrinsic incentives fostered a mercenary spirit and engendered strifes and jealousies. Wow. They preferred corporal punishment to ultimately was better than the extrinsic rewards. Here's another one. So Mark Lepper, David Green, hidden cost of rewards. They say for 12 days, there's a case study they did. There's a ton of case studies in their book. I just pulled one out. For 12 days, 4th and 5th graders were rewarded for playing certain math games, right? Okay, you do this game, you do well, you get a reward. Okay, good, nice. At first, it worked. But when the rewards disappeared, their interest plummeted well below those who were never rewarded in the first place. Why? Because their motivation became attached to the reward instead of the intrinsic value of learning. Here's another one. So Ari Kuglansky, University of Maryland. He says high school students who were offered a reward, who were not offered a reward for the given task exhibited superiority and creativity and reported greater enjoyment than their rewarded counterparts. Isn't that interesting? They were more creative, right? Instead of scrambling to do the minimum to get the reward, remove the reward and you open the way for them to be creative and really enjoy the process itself. And there's another one, Edward Deci. Okay, so you may think, all right, guys, you've looked at just a few case studies. Deci and his group of researchers, they went and looked at 128 experiments and compiled all of the information together. And here's his concluding remarks. He says, it leads to the conclusion that tangible rewards tend to have a substantially negative effect on intrinsic motivation. They may work in the short run, but ultimately they're hungry again without the tools to feed themselves. There's this negative effect. So Daniel Pink in his book, Drive, I've got it here, highly recommended, especially for charter school leaders. It's not necessarily an education book, but really, really good. It's more a business and education and families. He also has a TED Talk out, so you might want to jot his name down, listen to his TED Talk. It says carrots and sticks don't work. They achieve precisely the opposite of their intended aims. So with all this said, you may be thinking, well, at least hopefully I've convinced you to at least question your use of extrinsic motivators in your schools, to maybe spark a conversation with your leadership team. Is this PBIS system that we're doing with the coins and the tokens and whatever, is it really achieving what we want it to? What's our ultimate long-term goal? And if you arrive at the conclusion to make a change, may I offer a few suggestions? Okay. Again, our time is limited today, but I wish we could get into a lot more, but I'll give you just some thoughts. Step one, if you decide you want to do better motivating intrinsically for your staff and your students, step number one is to stop using extrinsic motivators. Take the leap of faith, give it a shot, move in that direction. Let me tell you my own personal experience. So like I told you, I was a school teacher for a while, and at our school, we did what we called textbooks. It was this typical token economy. All the teachers used it. Every time a kid did something good, hey, you did your homework. Hey, you asked a good question. Hey, you're breathing. We gave them a textbook. And then twice a year, we had an auction. They bought cool stuff, right? Standard token economy. I went and got my master's. I went and left teaching, became a school administrator. And during that time, I published a book over the course of all my research that I was doing on this topic. And I came back to teaching. Like I told you, I quit because I missed kids. And I went back to education or to teaching with my same staff. It was August in our initial PLC meeting, and on the agenda was our token economy system. And I felt really kind of awkward. I was like, oh, what am I going to do? But I eventually got the courage to raise my hand and said, sorry, guys, I feel like I can't participate in the token economy this year. You go ahead if you want to, but I just think I'm not going to. And they're like, really? Tell us why. So I told them some of my thoughts, what I've learned in my research. And they're like, okay, cool. And let's all drop it. So they made the decision to get rid of the token economy. So what happened? First day of school, kids show up. They say, hey, where's the bucks? To which we replied, no, we're not doing that anymore. And then what'd they say? All right. The next day, did they bring it up? No. They never brought it up again. They didn't care. It was this huge, massive headache that we were creating that really was simply unnecessary. So take a leap of faith. Try to abandon it. Now, are there any times in which you should use extrinsic motivators? This man in this book, Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn, he would say no. This researcher would say, no, there's never a time. Personally, I think that there are some times we can use extrinsic motivators. If we have short-term goals, I would do it one-on-one, not school-wide, one-on-one basis. That's unique to that particular kid. And it's not competitive, not contingent upon other students also doing a certain thing. And we wean them away as fast as possible. I teach this strategy in a longer, or in another workshop, but just touching on that, that's what I believe. Just know that this researcher disagrees with me. You choose, right? I just wanted to have full disclosure there. So then, here's Alfie Kohn. He's the one that wrote that book. He says, if our goal is quality or lasting commitment to a value or behavior, no artificial incentive can match the power of intrinsic motivation. We want to build from within instead of bribing or coercing from without. How do we do that? Well, Again, in the larger training, we spend about half of it on ditching extrinsic motivators and the other half on getting into the research of motivating intrinsically. I'll give you just a couple things here. Let's apply this to you as school leaders. So you play a really important role as educational leaders in your schools and leading out on this topic for students. A lot of you likely have a PBIS system for your entire school, positive behavior intervention system, right? And a lot of you may have some sort of token economy system you're using for your whole school. I'd invite you to evaluate its effectiveness. What's your ultimate goal? And then perhaps consider building that system, shifting and building that system around recognition instead of rewards. In the larger training, we talk about good praise and bad praise because there is a difference between the two. But just go for now that we learned that there is no substitute. The best motivator is effective praise from a valued adult. And so if we can build a system around recognition, we're likely to be building from within instead of without. What about for your staff? Okay, how do we motivate our staff to be the best that they can be using intrinsic motivators? All these principles still apply. Let's talk about money for a second. So in Daniel Pink's book, Drive, he teaches this principle that research says we should pay people enough so it's not a major worry. I know we're not in the business sector right now. I understand that we don't we're not working on commission or anything like that. But for our schools, we should, as often as we can, as much as your budget will allow, pay people enough so they're not even worried about it, so they can focus on what matters most, which is teaching in the classroom. For me personally, right, I wouldn't do this for free. I have some money that I need to make, right? And so my school, luckily, I believe, does pay me enough to the point where it's not a huge deal. I'm not sitting around worrying about it, and I'm just ready to go rock it in the classroom. That number looks different for everybody. I know it's a massive conversation, but just throwing the principle out now, if you can, pay people enough so that's simply not a worry. And then lastly, an intrinsic preview. How do you motivate intrinsically? The researchers will tell us three things.
Nathan, there was one quick question in the chat. So sorry to interrupt.
Oh, please, good.
They were just wondering if you would share some quick notes about good praise versus bad praise, if time permits.
Awesome. Thanks for jumping in. Sorry, I just getting rolling. So good praise is generally individual. We try to refrain from doing it and doing it in public. So individual, one-on-one, and it reinforces effort, not ability. Does that make sense? So let's say a kid does really well on a test. Instead of saying, hey, you got an A, well done, we should say, look at all the studying and effort you put in to achieve what you just did. I'm so proud of your effort and what you did. I bet you can do it again. And I also didn't do it in front of everybody, right? It's that one-on-one. So we're not putting people on the spot and also making other people feel jealous that they didn't receive the reinforcement. I hope that was helpful. Okay, good. There's a lot more to it, but maybe there's a quick synopsis. Thank you for jumping in. If you have other questions, I know I'm cruising. We can go for it. Okay, so intrinsic preview. 3 things motivate people from within. Number 1, autonomy, the ability to choose. Number 2, mastery. Mastery is the innate desire in all of us to want to become our best selves. And lastly, purpose, the whys behind what we do. Again, I'll spend about 3 hours on those things in different trainings. Hopefully that's helpful. Let's pause and let's have all of you do another 30-second quick jot for action items. Is there something that you can do to improve motivation in your schools? Good. For teachers, autonomy, mastery, purpose, I teach those in great depth. There are a lot of things to discuss there. So I love this quote, and we're referring to motivation. Some teachers get their students to behave by offering rewards, but my students, they're good for nothing. I don't have to give them a thing. They're going to be good simply because we motivate from within. Love it. Good. Now, just like I was worried about, I figured we would run out of time to discuss the last principle, which is reinforcing the positive. Perhaps I'm doing another training later on, and on our exit ticket, I'm going to have you do a survey. I'm going to ask you, which principle would you like to learn more of? Perhaps this last principle here, reinforcing the positive, is something that you would like to discuss. I feel bad running through this, but I want to make sure I'm maximizing our time. So let's pause here and we're going to wrap things up. I'm looking at the clock. We've got about 10 more minutes, and I am committed to making sure we're out of here on time because I value your time. Let's take a quick test. I call it the smile test. You know, just how yawning is contagious, so is smiling, right? So a lot of the principles we've talked about today encourage us to be a force for good and light and encouragement in our schools amongst both staff and students. So here's the test. I'm going to put scrolling images on the screen of people smiling, and your goal is to not smile back. All right? So put on your mean stoic principal faces. Kid's just messed up. All right? He's in your class. You had some fighting going on. You're angry. Here we go. Don't smile back. It's either the children or the old people that get you every time. Now ask yourself, did you fail the test? If you did, well, that's okay. If you didn't fail the test, that doesn't mean you're like cold-hearted, right? It's just demonstrating the principle that we want to be a light to others. So I ask you, how often do your students and your staff take the smile test? Are you a force for good? Do you have light in your eyes and in your smile? Are you creating a culture in your school that empowers people to achieve, to want to be there, to strive to do their best? Such comes with a smile. Maya Angelou said this very famous quote, I'm sure you all know, they may not remember what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. So let's end where we started, your personal action plan. Hopefully you have at least 3, if not 5 things written down on your action plan of specific things you want to take and use in your schools. I'd encourage you to stay in contact with me. Let me know how you're doing, how you're feeling, what's working, what's not working. And I would love to stay in contact with that. So as we wrap things up, I would like for everybody, so let's see, we're done 10 minutes early, 9 minutes early, hooray. That was the goal. And what I'd like to do during that time, I see there's some comments in the chat. I'll answer some questions. Also, will all of you please go to the tinyurl.com or scan that code, the QR code, and please fill in some feedback on this, and that will be provided to the UAPCS. So, good. Should I look at the chat? I'm going to stop presenting. Actually, you probably need that. You pull up the chat.
And then Nathan, I was going to say, while they're filling that out, we had a presenter who was unable to join us last month. And so she's here. So that works out great to have 10 more minutes. And we will kind of just let her end too once you are done, if there's any questions.
A question or a thought.
Please.
Great,
And by the way, thank you. That was a fantastic training. I really appreciate what you've shared. You said something here, and this might require longer conversation, but just this idea of not just sort of giving this public praise, and I know that was in reference maybe to to students. Would you also apply that to our staff? Because we found that, you know, a certain amount of kind of public acknowledgement and celebrating together can be fun, but I also understand human nature and the tendency to maybe feel jealous or feel unrecognized if you're not noticed. But do you have any additional thoughts on that?
Great question. What we're doing here is we're teaching principles and not necessarily, you know, a principle you can apply as you see fit to the scenario. So in general, the principle is praise in public, or sorry, in private. Is there any point in time in which praising in public could be good? Yeah, I think there is. I would just caution about doing it too much or too emphatically. So for instance, I have a personal opinion that goes contrary to common practice in schools. I'm not a huge fan of the Teacher of the Year award. I feel like it potentially pits people against each other. Instead, I would prefer to recognize who would have become the Teacher of the Year. I would recognize them individually and do something to help them know how much you see they're succeeding and how good that is, as opposed to the potential of pitting people against each other. Now, again, that's an opinion, but the principle is praise in private more than public. But if there's an occasional moment to praise in public and you feel good about it, by all means, go forward. Just, I try to minimize it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let's see. We would love some quick notes. Review of praise. Good, good. Oh, and there's the survey put in there. Awesome. Thank you, Debbie, for putting the survey in. Okay, I'll hang on just for a little bit if anybody wants to chat, but it looks like there was another presenter as well, and I want to be happy to give them their time.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Nathan.
everybody. Hooray.
That was a great presentation and a great training. Thank you so much. I know I took a lot of good notes. Corey. Corey's here today. Yay. She got caught up with some other important meetings last time. And so we'll give her just a couple minutes. And she said she's short and sweet and will just give us the information we need. So Corey, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So I am just sharing a very short presentation, but basically all of the information you need is in the flyer that I've attached in the chat. I'm introducing you to the Small Schools program, which you may have been aware of a little bit last year. There is a Small Schools program set aside within the statewide online education program, which just funds participation in the statewide online education program by small schools. Okay, and many charter schools qualify. So the statewide online education program, if you're not aware of it, uses a number of charter schools and school district schools that are fully online schools to allow your students access to online courses. Okay, so we have 7 participating providers, an average of 91% successful completion rates. That's because a fully online school has a history of developing that infrastructure to support students in an online environment, whether it's building online courses from a backwards design perspective or having structures in place to support students in a fully online environment. Okay, so the small school subsidy, but that's what I'm here to talk about, is for any school which, as of last June 30th, that's when we take our measure, so your year-end UTREX uploads. As of last June 30th, if you enrolled on a K-12 basis less than 1,000 students and had any high school students, 9th to 12th graders, then you are eligible for this funding. And this funding fully covers all of the costs for your 9th to 12th graders to participate in SOEP. So any online classes you want are fully subsidized, fully covered by this funding source. Last year we had a tiny little funding source. This year it's been expanded, so it should fully cover everything. That includes remedial courses, but I don't mean remedial like packet sort of courses pared down to standards. These are full online courses that your students can take on a remedial basis, you know, to cover remedial credits, but they're full online courses and that cost is covered. So it's a course with all the bells and whistles and that cost is covered. 9th to 12th grade participation. We're working with the legislature to expand that to your middle schoolers because we also offer middle school content. Okay, and you can just read the reasoning there. Okay, we don't want to, we know in a small school environment, you have a hard time attracting and retaining teachers, especially when course sizes are small. If we're taking students out of those courses, that's actually damaging you and increasing your instructional costs. And so that's why this program was formed, so that that is not occurring. You have the same funding amount for that teacher, even if some of your students are working online. Okay, so just to let you know, in 2023, we had 39,000, just over 39,000 9th to 12th grade learners eligible. The small amount of funding that we had covered 4.5% of those. So just 1,700 students could participate. But that's why we had, because that funding was fully obligated by September, the legislature increased that funding. But the funding that was given this year is one-time funding. In order for that to be ongoing and all of your online course costs to be covered in perpetuity, you actually have to use the program. And we have enough to cover your costs, everyone's costs, for whatever purpose. We're only at 35% usage right now. So if your kids enroll for the remainder of the year, all of your costs are going to be covered. And those enrollments will retain this option for you, retain this funding source. So that's really what I want you to know. And as I said, there's a flyer in the chat. And let's see, I don't think there's anything else. Oh, let me just explain why this allocation is given to you. When your students enroll in the statewide online education program, they are, even if they enroll for 6 or 8 credits outside of your school, those are your students and all the funding accrues to you. Okay, those courses are actually listed in the students' schedules at your school. You're funded for those. A portion of that funding would normally be taken to cover costs of instruction. The rest, about 50%, and it varies. We're developing a funding model to better encompass that amount and to maybe bring down course costs as well in this legislative session. But a portion remains with you to cover graduation, counseling, all those things. But that portion sorry, I'm pointing to my other screen, that portion here listed as costs of instruction is now covered by small schools funding. So on your allotment memos, you will see a negative for X dollars. And then in the small schools, it's called something else, a small schools category, you'll see a positive that directly offsets that, so your costs are 0. So that fully explains everything I had to tell you. please get in touch with me. And here's a link to the small schools flyer, but it's also in your chat. And I can share this with Marie so she can share it with you, so you have that link. And then just feel free to contact me. I'm kind of the program lead who deals with legislative matters and so on, so that, you know, I have information about the funding source and so on. So please get in touch with me. And just as one more thing, let's see if I can make you guys big enough that I can attach this. Anyway, before you end, or maybe I'll just email it to Marie, I have a list of all of you sweet small charter schools that are eligible for this funding. And I say sweet charter schools because I started out 15 years ago at USBE as a charter school financial analyst. So I love you all. So that's why I wanted you to know about this funding source. So we'll do that, and you guys are done. You can go, and I'm done. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Corey, and what a fun connection. So thank you for that. As Corey said, we are at the end of our meeting. In case you missed it, I've got that as a PowerPoint, so I'll just send that out to you. Nothing super major to have on your radar. We made it through October 1 count, so that was our big one. But that'll be in your email. And if there's anything that you need or that you have questions on, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we are always happy to help you and connect with you. So I'll stay on for a minute. I'm not sure if Nathan is still on in case anyone wanted to chat with him. Oh, looks like he is. Perfect. And Corey's here too. So if anyone wants to chat, we'll just stay on for a few more minutes.
Yeah, I'm here if you want to chat.
I can't find my little button to to say goodbye. So
Thanks, Corey. We appreciate it.
thank you.
Errol, thank you for being here. Appreciate your nice message.